Okay, so my name's Laura Weston, and I was born in Birkenhead in 1964, above my dad's painting and decorating shop, and I think that was where I first got interested in pattern and colour, because I was like looking at the wallpaper pattern books, and I really, liked art, and I used to spend a lot of time as a kid drawing and painting. And then we moved to Oxton Village when I was about 10. And after that, I used to spend a lot of time wandering around the Williamson Museum and Art Gallery and looking at things like the Della Robbia pottery, and really always liked art at school. And so it was like a natural progression for me to find out more about it, really.
Yeah, so how was school? Did school encourage your art making?
Yeah, so I found school quite difficult. I went to a really, sadly, terrible school. I thought it was going to be like a convent. I didn't want to go to school with boys in. I wanted to go to an all-girls school, and when I went there, it was a convent, but then it became a sort of a comprehensive school, and to be honest, there were a couple of really excellent teachers, and I feel like what you do that I was exposed to or worked with, and I feel like the art teachers were amazing teachers, and the history teacher was amazing, and the English teacher, and particularly the art room, I felt incredibly comfortable and happy in the art room, and not really happy anywhere else. Definitely not in the playground. And that kind of continued, particularly into my teenage years. And I was very awkward in my teenage years. But the only place I felt comfortable and confident was the art room.
Yeah. And you said your dad was a painter, decorator.
Yeah.
So did he sort of push you down the art route in any way?
Well, no, because I was the youngest child of 3. I feel like they just kind of left me alone, and basically they said to me, you do whatever you want to do. And I think as a parent you do get to that point with your kids where you're pushing them, and I think the heat is off the youngest child because they've already gone through all their issues with the older children. So it was very refreshing, because they just basically said, whatever makes you happy, oh Laura, you do. So what happened was I failed my A-levels. I got 1 in art, and that was like fate, because there were a couple of lads that I quite liked that lived across the road from me in Normanston Road in Oxton, and one of them worked at the BBC, and one of them had just graduated from a degree in fine art film, and they said to me, why don't you go to art school, you'll love it. So to be honest, you don't listen to adults, do you? I never did, but I really liked these lads, and I listened to them, and I thought, yeah, oh God, there's a fly in here. Basically, I thought, yeah, I'm gonna go to art college. So I went to do an art foundation at Withens Lane, which was in Wallasey, and I just felt like, as soon as I walked in there, I just felt like I felt in the art room, really, and I just thought, yeah, this is my tribe.
Yeah, you met people that you really connected with there.
Well, I just became more confident.
Yeah. Because
also it was a bit of a wake-up call, because what you realise is when you go to an art foundation is that is that I think we're just going to have to accept that fly is like living here.
Just can't.
So basically, when you go to an art foundation, you're suddenly with loads of other really talented artists, and basically you suddenly think, actually, shit, I'm not so good as I thought I was. And what that does is it like raises your game, because if you don't raise your game, then you're not going to succeed, are you? So it forced me to try new things, because I think I was that person that was very reluctant to try new things. I was very set in my ways.
Yeah.
And years later, when I became a university lecturer, I always used to recall those moments when I felt the most uncomfortable were almost the most key learning moments. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, would you say that it was your peers at art school that sort of pushed you to try new things, or was it
No?
the course?
I think I was always. I was always a when I was doing art, I was always a grafter, and I think anyone that is genuinely doing art, even if they're just doing it for their own sort of like self-actualisation or whatever, they will spend hours and hours and hours on it. It's like music, it's not an easy thing to do. You've got to like really become completely absorbed in it. And like on the Art Foundation, they would just throw things at us, and they'd just say, right, do this, and it was really hard work, but I really enjoyed it. And the other thing was, I was always a little bit contrary, so whatever an adult told me to do, I never wanted to do. So like, they said, oh, you should do graphic design, and I said, I don't want to be a graphic designer, I want to be a fine artist, I want to make films, and I want to do printmaking. And they said, well, we don't think you should, but like, I was adamant that I wanted to do that. So I applied to Nottingham to do fine art, and I went to my interview and got rejected.
Yeah.
Because my portfolio wasn't developed enough, but also, rather unfortunately for me, there was an artist, a really famous artist called Dame Laura Knight. That was their most famous artist that went to Nottingham, and my name happened to be Laura Knight. So as soon as I walked in, they thought I'd gone there deliberately.
Oh, really?
Because I was called Laura. They said, and that was the first question they asked me.
Really?
Imagine being 18, 19, and somebody asking you about an artist who's got the same name as you. It was really famous in Nottingham, and you're like...
It's really awful.
Oh! And I was like, no. So obviously I went back home, found out everything I could about Dame Laura Knight, who was a really cool artist. She basically was part of the Newland School of Painters, was a successful artist at a time when women just weren't, and she actually was the official war artist for the Nuremberg trials.
Wow.
So after that, she almost sort of was alongside me until I got married. Anyone who was in the arts, when I met them for the first time, they'd say, what's your name? And I'd say Laura Knight, and straight away they'd be like, whoa. And that was really funny when I met Bob Godfrey, because he was like the person that taught me to animate, and he used to call me Dame Laura, and I learned to animate from him. But I think he was delighted by the fact that my name was Laura Knight. He thought it was really funny. Anyway, so I got rejected from Nottingham Poly, and I was absolutely gutted. And then this tutor, who I think you'd describe her as a bit of a ball breaker. She said, right, I'm taking you in hand. And so she worked with me for 2 or 3 weeks on what I would look at now, because I've got photographs somewhere of what she made me do. Heck of a lot of life drawing, heck of a lot of work that was like about me, which made me feel intensely uncomfortable. Whacked it all in the portfolio, went to Wolverhampton Poly and got a place. And it was a remarkable place. That place was, I look back at it now and I just think it was just the most, got a car alarm now. It was just the most amazing place, and I absolutely bloody loved it there.
Yeah.
Loved it there. It was a real eye-opener, because I'd grown up in Birkenhead, so there wasn't such a thing as like multiculturalism then. It was just very, very bland place to be, and suddenly I'm in Wolverhampton and Birmingham, and it's like just incredible. I'm going to the rag market and I'm finding all these amazing things to eat, like what the hell is an aubergine? It was just fantastic. And I was with a really interesting group of people from all over the UK, and I met my best friend on the first day, and we are still really good friends. I'm going to see Bill Ryder Jones at the Barbican with her in October. So that's like me longest lasting friendship, really. And she taught me loads about film, because she knew everything about film. So it was like we just clicked, and I just had the most amazing time at uni, and I had a great tutor who was a feminist, and that's a really important thing. So at the time, it was a very not a great place to be. It was the 80s, and there was a lot of I suppose you'd call it toxic masculinity, and he was the one tutor that was just, he was an experimental filmmaker from London, and he taught me about all these amazing experimental filmmakers, like Stan Brakhage and Maya Deren and Jules Engel, and all these incredible people that made these weird films, and I absolutely loved all these experimental films. And also around that time as well, I was discovering music like Steve reich and Michael Nyman, and there was all the Derek Jarman stuff as well, and I absolutely loved Derek Jarman, and so that was all going on around me during my fine art degree. And there was 2 places that I used to go. The serious place was where the painters would all hang out, and they were mostly men, and they were mostly slightly up themselves. But the print room was where what I would call the weirdos hung out, and it was just the best place ever. And it was run by these 2 tutors called Don and Jim, and they were unconventional but fabulous, and they knew everything about printmaking. And that was when I realised that printmakers are really interesting people, and I've never met a bad one yet, as in a not nice. Every printmaker I've ever met has been incredibly interesting, willing to share what they do. There's a camaraderie in printmaking, because I think a lot of the time you are alongside other people. I'm not, because I print most of my stuff at home, but whenever I've gone in a print room, there's a great camaraderie in the print room.
Is that generally because you have to be in, there's only one room where you can do it? You can't just do it in your apartment?
Well, I feel like there are methods of printmaking that I use that I can do on my own really competently and well. But if you're doing things like etching or silkscreen, or they even did lithography there. I never did that, but they did with old lithography stones and aquatint, and it was just. I'm thinking about it now and it's making me smile. I think it was Don or Jim, I need to do my fact checking really, but they were just glamorous. Do you know what I mean? They were they were in their 40s. They had fags hanging out the corners of their mouth. They were just characters, and they just knew stuff, and they just let us be really, and they just, we were all a big gang of weirdos, and they just kind of let us be in their amazing print room, which sadly is gone. Because print rooms are expensive, but that course was amazing, and I loved Wolverhampton. I used to live by the Molineux, and the college was right by the Molineux football ground. So what we'd do is we'd walk through the car park to get to college, and then there was a pub right by the college which was called the Goalposts, and we always used to end up in there at about 9 o'clock. And I think with fine art students then particularly, a lot of our education happened in the pub, because we'd all be sitting around talking about our work, and we were all working really hard, sometimes we'd be in there till 9 o'clock at night, and it was because we wanted to be. And it was like proper happy days really.
Okay, so what happened after that? Did you stay in Wolverhampton?
No, I was always I was always desperate to kind of get myself out there. So as soon as I'd made a film, I made this like really shit Super 8 film, and Guy had said there was a festival in Leicester. So basically I entered it for this festival, got it in, went to Leicester. It was in the back of a pub in Leicester. And after that I realised, God, I really like going to festivals, I really like showing my work. So like after that I started making films and I'd send them into festivals of experimental film. And then I started doing editorial illustrations for a magazine of experimental film and video that they used to sell in like Smiths. So I thought I'd arrived, I was getting paid a £5 for every illustration that I did. And they were mostly things I'd done from my films anyway. And the guy that edited that magazine, it was called Dave. It turned out he was the judge for an international biennale that my lecturers entered me for. So what happened was, in my third year, I got entered for this international biennale of colleges of art. It was European Biennale. And I just completely forgot about it. And the next thing is I get a letter to say that my work's going to be shown in this really prestigious art gallery in Marseille. And I'd never even been abroad much, and I remember getting a train to Marseille, all expenses paid, and walking into this art gallery, and it was all white, because it was the like late 80s. It was all stark and white, and there was my work with all these other students' work, and after that it went to Breda, it went to Bonn, and then it ended up at the Henry Moore Gallery at the Royal College of Art, and that was like mind-blowing for someone like me to be like in the Royal College of Art, actually with a load of all these European students, and just being in Kensington Gore. And I just remember thinking, oh God, I like this. I like the way this feels to be exhibiting work in this way. And I'd got a job. I was the first person at my university to get a job before I graduated, and it was in a film and video workshop called Open Eye in Liverpool, which was funded by Channel 4 and the Arts Council. So when I finished my degree, I was working 2 days a week at Open Eye as an animation technician and finishing my degree. So all of that year, the years from say 87 to 88, after I graduated, they were just very exciting times, I was travelling, I was going off to these exhibitions. I got this new job in Liverpool as a film technician, and everything was just great, it was really, really interesting. I was living in a flat in Gambier Terrace, which was wonderful in Liverpool, and it was lively, it was good.
Yeah. Nice, yeah. So you moved to West Kirby 8 years ago.
Yeah. So
what happened in between?
Basically, after that job, what happened was I got made redundant from that job really quickly.
Yeah.
And that was again a moment where I became self-employed, and I set up my own like educational and film animation production company with some other women, and we ran that for a few years, and then that got me into lecturing because I'd be teaching animation then, and still sort of living in Liverpool. And then met my husband, who was like a mate really, when I was 30, and we got together and we moved in together to Oxton. And it was interesting meeting him because he'd known me for such a long time as a friend, and he was very interested in art too. So I think that was, and music, so I feel like we shared that. So he was always very encouraging of me to carry on doing what I wanted to do. So I was working part-time as a university lecturer in animation, alongside still doing exhibitions and projects. And I had met a woman called Marianne, who was a Dutch woman who became a really good friend in that European Biennale, who I'm still friends with now, and she's organised. I've done several exhibitions with her, touring exhibitions, and collaborations. So that was nice that I got to know her. And then we ended up kind of. The question was, how did we end up moving to West Kirby? So yeah, West Kirby, it's always been like a bit of a heart place for me. So like my nan, my nan that also used to live in Birkenhead where I was born, practically in the same, next door to the shop. She used to get the bus, my Nana Kelly used to get the bus to West Kirby as a day out, and she'd sit in the ovens by the marine lake. That was like her happy place. So always when I came here, I'd always feel like this was like my happy place. Basically just happened to be here on a particular day and saw a flat to rent, and we had our house up for sale, and I just thought, why can't we just try living here? Let's see what it's like living here. We'll rent here. So we ended up renting a flat here, and I've been doing lots of work inspired by Hilbury and the oyster catchers, which have become like a signature of mine, if you like, for years prior to moving here. So it was almost like a precursor. So I always say it's always like we got lured here by the oyster catchers. So yeah, so coming here and then finding this house right by the lake. And it was, big house, so it's got plenty of room for us all, and it's literally like a 60-second walk to the lake. It's just perfect for me, really, and it's got a yard as well, and I spend a lot of time, my creative time, in the yard. So basically that kind of, I like being around outside in the yard with my plants, and I so often will work on the table in the yard. That's like I work all around the house, but the yard is a definitely great place for me to work.
Yeah, you mentioned before about sort of the way you work is by sort of squeezing in time whenever you can. Would you say there's any other sense of like routine to your day that you try and
pull
off?
So basically the day starts with the cat. So the cat wakes me up. And he is also a big part of my creative process, if you like. So I don't really do life drawing, which I think is a really great discipline for artists to do, but I do life drawing of the cat. So he's like my model. So hence he's become my like muse, if you like. So, I do draw him, and I think also I am like definitely one of those people that ranks animals at the same level as a human. So like I do sort of relate to him. He's with me all the time, so he's here now, but he's like off camera because he is quite shy. But basically spend a lot of time with him. So he jumps on my head, wakes me up. So morning time is a very productive time for me. It never used to be when I was younger, but as I've got older, I feel like I am at my most creative and productive in the morning, or even very late at night. So I'll get up and feed the cat, and then if I've not got anything else to consider immediately, I've got to get on. Generally, I've got to get on with some really boring things. So like dishes, cooking, shopping, all the sort of like really really boring things, because my husband works full time, and so my responsibilities are. I've got to definitely chip in with that side of things. So that's why I think I've always done my printmaking in the kitchen, because I like the fact I can be close to all these different things that I need to do. So if it's a creative day, I might sort of switch the radio on in the kitchen, and I do like listening to music when I'm working. So sometimes I'll listen to Radio 3. Quite a lot of the time I'll listen to that, or sometimes I'll listen to sort of BBC 6 music, and I'll get all my ink out, and I'll get my sketchbooks out, and I'll start working on the kitchen table, and then I'll as I'm going along, I'll document what I'm doing with my phone. And what I do is I use Instagram to sort of microblog the processes of what I do. And then what I do, once I've done something, I bring it into the lounge, and I've got like a bureau in my lounge where I stick all my kind of work in progress. And you know, I'm very interested in art, other people's art as well. So we collect art, and we spent a lot of time in Cornwall. So and I think moving to West Kirby was almost like, oh well, we're never going to be able to move to Cornwall. Why don't we move to West Kirby? That's the closest we're going to get to being by the sea and stuff. So yeah, I do go for walks. You know, I'm always nipping out to the lake. And sort of getting a walk around the lake. And my favourite walk to do is to go along the dune. So last year I spent loads of time walking up and down from West Kirby to Hoylake, and that was where I got to witness all these little egrets that were flying in. And at one point I counted 21 last year. It was very exciting. So like, and then I started sort of doing little thumbnail drawings of the little egrets, and I've done a whole series of work based on those now. And then at the moment I'm working on a piece about a flounder, and it's this notion of like the flounder and there are a series of self-portraits really, and in the self-portraits I'm holding things, and there's quite a lot of symbolism around the things that I'm holding. So like there's 3 that I'm working on at the moment. One is me holding a very large pine cone that I found in Caldy on a specific day when I was thinking about a specific person, and I'd always wanted a giant pine cone, and I was thinking about this person. It was my dad. And then the next thing is I see this bloody giant pine cone. I'm in the car to pull up, and it's up there. I'll show it you later. Yeah, and then there's a flounder, which is kind of also about my dad, because he used to catch them when he was evacuated to Abergele during the war. So I've been thinking a lot. It sounds macabre, but quite a lot of my work is about people that are dead. So, do you know what I mean? So there's like a lot of memory associated with them. And then one of the prints is called Woman with Empty Vessel, and it's about a ship, and it's also about this notion of empty vessels. You know, empty vessels make most noise. You are an empty vessel, and it's this idea of sort of like there's nothing. What are you going to do now? Sort of like nothing there. You know, there's this void. What are you going to fill it with? So basically, at the moment, what we should do really is I should talk about these over there, because look, we could talk about flounder. So yeah, to being by the sea, I feel it is. I like to be, just as a person, I like spending time on my own.
Yeah.
I'm sociable, but I think the students used to call themselves, that I used to teach, some of them would call themselves like omniverts. Is that right? So like you're an extrovert and an introvert. So I do feel I am a little bit like that. I like spending time on my own, and I like spending sociable time with people. And I think West Kirby's a great place to spend time on your own, because you can walk around and, you know, be on your own in a matter of minutes. If you just go out towards Hilbury or you go along the dune, you can get away from people. And I do find if I'm on my own, I'll see something and it will trigger. So I did a whole series of work around swifts and sea holly when I was walking along the dune, and then obviously did all this work about egrets because of the little egrets last year. And at the moment I'm doing these self-portraits, and they're all pictures of me holding things, and they're done in a very expressionistic way, and that goes back to really early on in my creative career. Before I went to university to do fine art, I went to the Walker Art Gallery, and there was an exhibition of a German expressionist print, and it was the first book I'd ever bought. It's the first art book I'd ever bought of German expressionist print, and I feel like it's influenced me hugely. That book, just the the whole notion of expressionism and drawing. So a lot of my work, I feel it's stylised. It uses colours that are quite, there's a lot of symbolism in the colours that I use, and there's a lot of play with negative space. So it's not just about what's in there, it's about what's around there. And I think printmakers really explore negative space, and musicians do.
Yeah.
So if you think about the gaps in the music,
silence.
Yeah, so it's like the negative space, isn't it? So so I think when I got my hands on that book when I was about 20, and I just saw all these German expressionist prints, and I just thought, wow, they were primitive, and I thought, years ago I would have thought like these were cartoons in a way, and so that's why I think there's a link between animation and printmaking, because there's that primitive quality to a cartoon, so I've got, these prints, I'd say, a lot of these prints, I binge watched loads of Miyazaki films, like Ponyo, Spirited Away, just, Whispers of the Heart. I just ended up binge watching all these Miyazaki films, and I am a little bit obsessed with hokusai and like Japanese printmaking techniques. So the technique that I use to print is a Japanese technique. So it's a way they print woodcuts without press, and it's called barren printing. And what you do is you print on washi paper, which is very thin.
Do you tend to do any like huge projects, stuff that take many months or many years even?
Interestingly, this group of prints started several years ago. So I would say that is a huge project. And the idea would be to create a body of work, because I think if you're going to be an artist or perceive yourself to be an artist, you've got to have a body of work, and there's got to be some sort of like purpose to what you're doing. So I feel like with these self-portraits, these are very closely tied to what I've been learning about kind of humanist theory, person-centred therapy, and I've been thinking a lot about, there's been a lot of self-reflection over the last year, but to be honest, I feel that process began years ago when I first started doing the self-portrait work, because it's all about me, and that's the key really, and about my feelings, about my emotions, about my desires, my intentions.
Do you find that process of self-reflection challenging in any way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit exposing, because you don't really want to go there, because especially I think because people have often bought my work because it's very decorative and jolly and bucolic, but actually underneath it all there is a for want of a better word, there is a kind of a darkness there, because there's a lot of grief and there's a lot of like loss, and there's a lot of kind of I'd say there's like a wistfulness there, because I'm trying to sort of, I suppose there's a lot of kind of I can't even say it, mythologizing about my life, because I feel like there's life, isn't there, which is the daily grind, which is like how you pay your bills, all the the washing that you've got to hang out, the food you've got to shop for, all the things you've got to do with the car you've got to keep on the road, and then there's kind of the inner world where you can just be doing what the hell you want to do, and that's what I've always been at. I've been so blessed to be a daydreamer, because it's perfect. So it just means I can escape, even if I'm here now. Who knows, this afternoon I might disappear for 2 hours into something, and I'll be gone, because I'll be working on a new print. But I'd say these are big projects. I mean, one thing I'm doing at the moment, which is really big and tricky, is I'm organising the Oxton Art Fair, and that's a lot, you know. And I do think that's one of the downsides of creativity. You can't just create, but you've got to market what you create, and you've got to organise what you create, and that's a pain in the arse.
But you have to do it.
It's a necessary evil.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like for example with Instagram, I quite like Instagram because it is like a diary. It's like a visual diary of what I've made. And Twitter was, before it became X. It was Twitter was I suppose, when I was printing at night time 10 years ago in my kitchen, it was a very supportive place because people from Canada, all the printmakers, would be commenting on my work and being supportive about it. And I miss that in a way. I think Instagram is supportive, but it's not as supportive as it could be.
Yeah. And just going back to what you said before about the sort of, the challenge of self-reflection, do you think that, like, discomfort is the necessary part of making great art?
Well, it's interesting really, because I feel like I've learned it's about making mistakes, because when I was younger I don't think I realised how important mistakes were. And then a few years ago, well, about 5 years ago, I discovered these rules by this nun from Brooklyn called Sister Corita Kent, and I've actually reposted them today. And she has these like rules of creativity, and I've got them stuck up in my bedroom. Every morning I get up, and if I'm wondering what the hell to do, I just look on my Sister Corita's rules. And it's interesting, loads of artists draw from those rules, and I feel like you've got to have rules, you know. So I've got rules about my printmaking, so there's a definite way that I do my printmaking, and a section of it is all about making mistakes, and then some serendipity comes in. And I think my whole creative journey, it's about being in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place and meeting the right person. And I think if you just stay in your little shell, and which is what most artists want to do, if you just stay in your little shell and you don't put yourself out there and get rejected, you're never going to know. You know, if I reflect back on opportunities I've had because of my creative journey that all began through failure, you know. And I love watching, you know, kung fu movies with I can't think of his name, Bruce Lee, and I just really like the whole kind of notion of being like water. You know, you've got to just let it flow. And I love flow as well. I love the notion of flow, creative flow. So I feel like every print I've ever finished, I've had to find some creative flow to get to the end of it. Sometimes it takes 2 years to finish a print, because I'll do a drawing and it won't iterate into a print for years but once I've found flow, it really does. And sometimes that can be quite emotional, you know. Sometimes when I've finished something, it can be quite an emotional experience because there's a lot loaded on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I've got to move on to the next thing. So that's really important.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I was going to ask, maybe as a last question, what advice you'd give to sort of artists who are young in their career. Embracing mistakes sounds really good, actually.
Yeah, I think there's two people I think I would direct you to. One is Austin Kleon, who's written a really accessible book called Steal Like an Artist, and it's this notion that nothing you do is original anyway. There's always little bits of other people's. So I think one of Sister Corita's rules, and he mentions Sister Corita Kent in his book, you know, Steal Like an Artist. Basically, one of their rules is watch films, you know. Now, I watch shitloads of films. I just do. You know, I will watch anything, literally anything. I will watch anything, and I will learn something from that. So I feel like I'm a visual learner, and if I can watch films, I'm going to learn stuff. So I watch a lot of old films. I watch a lot of like old series. I'm very much inspired by that. So I feel like one of the things you've got to realise is that you shouldn't think that your creativity is this unique thing. You'll get a lot of things from just looking at what other people do and walking in other people's shoes and experimenting, and then just doing what the hell you want to do. So I think Sister Corita Kent's a really good call, and her rules, and just the fact that she was like this nun from Brooklyn who did really jazzy, fantastic art, and then Austin Kleon, and one of her rules is be happy, and I just think that's really elusive, isn't it? It's hard to be happy, but sometimes you can be happy with just a really simple thing, like, you know, a nice cup of tea or a decent cup of coffee, or just going for a quick walk. So often the things that can make you the happiest are things that, you know, you've got within you anyway, but it's hard. I know it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's the be happy one. Yeah, it does sound kind of stupid when you first think of it, but then when you consider the fact that there's such like a you know, there's this classic romantic ideal of the artist as
not happy,
you know, suffering, you know, bleeding and sweating to get the work, then you think, you know, you're not, well, at least I think that, yeah, you're not going to have that sort of lightness to you. I think you've got a real point there about the suffering artist, because to be honest, to be really honest with you, I think I do my most productive work when I'm really, really miserable. And I feel like, why am I doing that? And the answer to that question is because it makes me happy. Because life, it means I can escape from whatever's pissing me off in life. And to be honest, that is what I did when I was 3. Yeah. And that is what I'm going to do now. So a lot of the stuff that is tied up in my creativity, it's not changed from when I was a really little kid. And I actually think that's a really interesting point. I feel like it is a cliche, but you do have to sort of like really try and maintain that childlike curiosity. And that's the other thing about printmaking. It's so complicated and fabulous. There's so many different ways you can do it. I just will never get bored of it, you know. Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's just not a boring thing to do. You know, it's funny. So I've got this. I wanted to sort of read this out. It is quite funny what I wrote here. I wrote this when I was 21, because I think sketchbooks are great, notebooks are great if you're creative. And I said here, this is at age 21. When you are young, your mind is not cluttered with adult misconception. Anything you draw or paint or create is a considerable achievement. Each tentative mark or bold splatter increases your confidence when no formal teaching is given. Ability in the traditional sense plays no part, and pleasure is the goal. And I just think pleasure is the goal. Yeah. So in my case, I'd say, God, who knew I knew that shit? Sometimes your creative outputs will give people pleasure, and that's an amazing feeling. So, you know, like if somebody buys a piece of your work, you just think, oh, that's so lovely. It's not about the money, it's almost about the fact that they want to hang it on their wall or give someone a card that you've done the art for. But like it's where it becomes doubly beneficial is it's giving me a sense of purpose, and I'm escaping into it. That's why I think it's magical realism, because I do genuinely feel like I'm slipping off. Yeah. No, it's really, really interesting, really cool. Yeah.
And I think if kids, I mean, this is the interesting things. I think women artists that don't have children because of their circumstances, so maybe A, they didn't want them, or B, they couldn't have them, they never got round to having them. I feel like they are in a position where they maybe could just disappear for 12 hours and no one's going to bug them, whereas I think a lot of artists who have got commitments going on, not just women now, men as well, they've got parental responsibility. It is hard because sometimes you do want to, if you're in flow, you do want to escape for 8 hours, but it's not an option to be in flow and then basically nothing else gets done.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one, isn't it?